if we're talking about stuff that makes people happier, that maximizes or at least improves human happiness, but it shouldn't be done because there's some abstract concept of what it should be and it doesn't match up with that, I mean, how does that fit? We could do that with anything.
It's plainly not the case that you determine.
Plainly not. See, you're doing it again. You keep referring to matters of intuition. No, it's not plainly not. Any action.
It's not a matter of intuition.
Any
it's
social
a rational
bond,
observation.
like a hug with somebody, can have many meanings and purposes depending on what you're trying to do.
0% of you are subscribed. Fix that.
The point is, we should implement sort of social standards, moral or mores, as well as, legislative goals of recapturing what sex is and what it's for, so that casual sex is not something that either men or women are just having, freely.
Not? It's good. It feels good. I feel like I want to know the root of like the purposeful harm here. Okay. So I go out to a bar and I meet a cute girl and we get flirty and we go to her place. Okay. So abortion's illegal, contraception's not available. All right. I'm a fertile young man. I got to be careful. So do you think it would be morally superior for me to just like do anal with her? Would that as opposed to contraceptive vaginal sex? So anal's not superior. Why not? Because there's no purpose to reproduction for anal sex.
Yeah. So ultimately, and on a technical level, both. So contraceptives contraceptives like the pill or an IUD or things like that. The reason why these are problematic is because they're what is called natural vices. And in the same way, contraceptive is a natural vice with respect to
anal sex a natural vice?
Yes, and so that's where I'm going. So anal sex, but then also oral sex, masturbation, all these sorts of things.
Where?
So the virtue would be, or the virtue in question is chastity, but then overall it's human sexuality per se.
How is chastity a virtue?
Because it according to chastity, one is best able to attain to the perfection that is sex, according to the two ends of procreation. I don't
believe
unity.
it. Where is that from? What study could I refer to determine that?
There are certainly papers, academic papers, but
religious papers, I imagine, on the virtues of chastity.
No. Philosophical papers and sometimes there's Christians who are talking about it, sometimes it's not Christians. Like, for instance, Aristotle believed in the virtue of chastity.
I don't care what he believed.
And he wasn't a Christian. Okay, but the point is, you're asking for studies from somebody else.
But this is
I'm
just
just
the thing.
giving a
philosophy,
very easy example.
So philosophy, as I understand it, guides my interpretation of the facts of the world. Like the facts of the world are as they are, but I'm not being given a fact of the world here. You're asking Aristotle to supply it, that it's a virtue.
No.
Well, in what way?
Right. So just to refer back to sort of my opening comments, there I was basically very, very, very briefly describing virtue ethics and teleological ontology.
Yeah, I don't believe in those either.
Yeah, okay. It's right. So you'd have to provide me with reasons why you don't believe in those. Like, just saying it is okay. Who cares? Like, how are we supposed to have a discussion?
Well, no. But again, the problem is. So the problem is here. Like, notice how my utilitarianism hasn't really been relevant to the discussion. Because the harm standard for assessing whether something is good or bad is like a broadly accepted, observationally valid way of determining whether or not we should invest energy in preventing something. But you have to keep referring back to like abstract, unfalsifiable concepts of virtue or what is intended or what is purposeful to make statements about the world. Whereas my philosophy, my framework guides my understanding of the world. Yours tells you what the world is. You're seeing harm where, as I understand it, it doesn't exist because you're told, well, that's harmful. I don't know how you could look at casual sex and see harm. I don't think chastity is a virtue. I think moderation is a virtue, but I think that life is complicated enough that people have to be expected to make their own choices. So is gluttony bad? Well, in the biblical sense, like overeating at every meal, sure, you'll get sick that way, fine. But is eating heavily on Thanksgiving morally wrong? Is it gluttonous to enjoy a single great meal? Well, no to you, because in your head, you're thinking, Thanksgiving's fine. But in my head, I think that casual sex is fine. So we don't have a shared ground to make any assessment here. If we're talking about like harm, do you feel a bit like, do you have a tummy ache after Thanksgiving? Sure, maybe. And maybe do people feel a little bit sad after casual sex sometimes? Sure. Okay. And then should we never have a big meal for our tummies might ache? No, we have to be personally responsible.
We do have to consider the consequences of casual sex. We also have to consider the utility of casual sex. But there's also more to be considered. That is the sort of standards of what sex actually is.
But what? No. It is what it is. It is a thing that feels good. Sometimes it leads to kids, sometimes it doesn't. The fact that you are arguing that it's a moral wrong to do anal sex is indicative of the fact that this is, respectfully, this is all religious gobbledygook. This isn't about like the perceived worth or use or whatever of an act. All human behaviors are multifaceted and have the ability to mean different things with different intentions in any case. This is society and social interactions are too complicated to factor in this way. And this standard you have, it's morally wrong because it doesn't fit in with my arbitrarily determined preconception of what it should be, would not hold to any other standard that we engage in. Not to shitting, not to hugs, not to kissing, not to eye contact with the Saudis, which you didn't respond to, by the way. This arbitrary standard is always invoked as a metric of control. So and all I hear here is control. But you offer control, but in a conciliatory way, you know? I feel bad for the loss of women's rights, but still I think that women should just risk pregnancy in all acts of sex and not be able to meaningfully develop careers because they get pregnant and married at 19, the way it was for thousands of years. If people weren't having oral and anal sex, which of course they have been. And it's I don't think you're lying to me at all, but it's like, why this arbitrary standard? I just want to know what harm there is in casual sex. I keep asking about harm, and then it keeps going to, well, I say that sex has this purpose, and it's immoral to not do that purpose. Which
so I don't say that sex has this purpose. I think that has been established through, thousands or millions or however many years humans have existed and have been having sex.
Have you done polls on people from like
people have
society?
Determined two things. One is for reproduction, and two, it's for a sort of almost at least significant, but I would say for most people it's a mystical union between two souls.
No, people fuck because it feels good. Romance can be a part of it, but the idea that historically sex has been a magical Disney bond between people is absolutely not true.
You've never had sex. You've never had head so good it sent you to the mystical plane.
Not from every person who gave me head. No, that's like a selective thing. I have standards for that.
However long you want to attribute. Let's just say millions of years. Millions of years of experience. It has no sort of recourse to any sort of abstract objective standard.
Studies? Well, I'm sorry, wait. Millions of years of human experience isn't an abstract, unobjective standard. Do you have a study on what people 1 million years ago thought of sex? Can you go to like Three Kingdoms, China, and do a poll on that? You really think you're literally saying like, everyone just knows this? That's what you're saying. You're just saying it in more words. That's the most abstract the standard can be. Also, I'm reflecting on how it's immoral for men and women to be roommates together as well, because male and female cohabitation would historically be known as like a sign of romance or mutual romantic commitment for like basically all human society.
Yeah, so I mean it depends. Like if it's a matter of scale, right? So it's not for sure it's not the same thing.
Scale but compared to
like
the
for instance,
I've
had female roommates in the past.
Well, hold on there, Bucko. Wait, hold on. The purpose of men and women living together is so that they can foster children unto God. You don't think it's cheap? Oh, no. Your first time living with a woman outside of your mom was supposed to be with your wife.
That's a sort of grotesque,
parody of cohabitation with a female. I completely agree. Yes, it's a disgusting parody.
Yeah, and it's not at all what I believe.
Well, I don't care.
I'm not sure how it's relevant to me.
Not deferring to your belief here. It's morally wrong by my standard that I've learned in the course of this conversation. This is what I mean with inconsistency, by the way.
Well, no,
the funny thing is, opposition to male and female cohabitation is actually believed by a ton of religious people, both like Islamic people, whatever, and Catholics who really don't like men and women living together in non-like married situations. So what I'm doing right now isn't even like this is your logic on mad. It's
it's a matter of scale. It's a matter of scale. It's a completely different topic.
But there's no harm you've demonstrated with casual sex, so there's no scale. It's a scale of 0 to 0.
No.
Also, how convenient for you, matter of scale. You get off easy, I'm sure.
No, what?
Oh, you're making moral excuses for a degenerate and devilish act. You should have had your first experience living with a woman when you were married.
No. So I would say it's probably not usually advisable, but it's not such a thing that one has to do
according to you, right? I'm sure
moral analysis. No,
because you had a thigh job, and thigh jobs are also not as much of a scale as other forms of sex, I'm sure.
Again, people just sort of naturally applying their rational faculties.
Catholics
to
literally
the problem.
refer to this as living in sin. Like this isn't just me making fun of your logic. This is believed by your institution.
I know. So, but what they're specifically referring to is not necessarily platonic housemates or something like that.
Right? So that's not what I've absolutely heard Catholics get mad at cohabitation, even in non-partnerships.
Yes, super traditional ones definitely do. You're right about that.
So how are you not perverting? Historically, would most human beings throughout history, overwhelming like 99%, not agree that a man and a woman who aren't related living together is absolutely something which is befitting that of a married couple, or at least two in a relationship?
For you, Vaush. Okay. You have been in more than your fair share of social media drama with high-profile women, including J.K. Rowling. Why are you here today advocating for an issue that ultimately doesn't affect you?
Well, first of all, I don't want to pretend that I'm selfless. It absolutely does. Okay, trust me. All right. I enjoy a lifestyle of casual sin, and I'm very, very happy to have birth control be accessible to the people I engage with. That's one. For two, worth pointing out that like even outside the obvious thing where like the ability to engage in reproductive and contraceptive freedom has helped women a lot over, the past 50 years. That's obvious. But additionally, one of my big like founding moral principles is consent, right? I mean, it's consent and harm. People should have the freedom to choose the directions that they want to move in life. And there are a lot of biological inequalities that are placed on us. Not just biological inequalities, but biological impositions. For example, some people are born sick or disabled. But should those who are born disabled not have the opportunity to live life as I can? Someone with, 2 functioning legs and a not hurt spine? Sure, we develop medicine or prostheses to help them. And in a lot of ways, let's be real here, having a womb is a kind of natural unequal disability, or I should say a different ability. It does make life harder in some respects, between the period business, cramps, and also, you get casual sex, you get knocked up your whole life. That's kind of a burden, I think. But they also get to give birth to children, and I don't know, that's kind of cool, I guess, for some people who are into that sort of thing. I just want the playing field to be leveled for every human to have the most roads open to them at all times, as long as they're not hurting other people, which, that's important. Reading between the lines, I find it difficult to assess this argument as anything but a religious opposition. At the end of the day, as a moral anti-realist, I recognize that where people's axioms come from, I don't necessarily know if I can critique them at their foundation, because I don't think there's like a solid grounding to do that for any one set of like axiomatic beliefs or properly basic beliefs. But in terms of how they're applied, I just think people have really strong emotional preconceptions of sex and what sex is meant to be that like corrupt their thinking on its potential social harm. I could imagine like after the Edo period, all the like samurai wandering Japan being like, oh, you failed your boss and you haven't disemboweled yourself. Well, if you look back 1,000 years of the history of our people in these mountains, you will recognize that failure and, the seppuku are one and the same, and you've cheapened but it's always rooted in social conservatism. The idea that this is what it's supposed to be because this is what it's been, asterisk, asterisk, maybe it hasn't actually always been that. Maybe people have been fighting against that for the entire existence of humanity. Maybe people have always wanted to get a nut off without having to worry about having to raise a child afterwards. But let's talk practical effects, right? Not like in Hollywood, but in casual sex and contraception. Does casual sex, does contraception, does it cause social issues? Undeniably, yes. Fully agree with that. See, that's the problem with freedom, right? If you give people the freedom to make mistakes, they will. And there are people who cheapen the value of intimacy for themselves by engaging frequently in casual sex. Now, I would argue this is a skill issue. I don't think that having lots of casual sex innately does this. I just think that, like with any other experience, social, chemical, or otherwise, people are capable of abusing it or misusing it in ways that are detrimental to them. And I think that is an issue. And I think the best thing we can do that is focus on solutions to social alienation. Maybe people like casual sex, sure, but let them find love. Let them find people they care about for more than a Tinder swipe, you know? I think there are ways to address that. It has to do with the way we structure our economy. It has to do with poverty, the way we build our cities, the way we build our roads. But it's very multifaceted. But there is something that can be done. I don't want to be like ignorant of or pretend to be ignorant of the social problems that come about with freedom. There are things we can do. But I think the freedom is non-negotiable. That was an interesting conversation. Fuck. Oh man. The problem is on a purely interpersonal level, I like Bagel and I enjoyed talking with him, but like it's all religious motivation. Yeah, like 100%. The idea of like determining the morality of behavior based on whether or not it conforms to an imagined pre-existing standard of whether or not humans understand it to be that, like, this is nobody, not only does nobody not use that system for stuff in reality, nobody could. It's not like a sustainable system, you know? This is like one of the genres of debate that I'm always the most cautious about, I guess, or the ones that like always make me feel the weirdest, where like a lot of religious people have a ton of beliefs that are just like a big poop of religious thinking, like this. You know what I mean? This is what I was drawing when you couldn't see his camera, right? And then like this guy Bagel is smart, and he goes and gets a PhD in philosophy or whatever, and now it's like this. It's like a poop that's been fortified. You know what I mean? Like, I don't doubt the quality of the fortifications. I don't doubt like the time and energy and effort and intelligence in the architectural, you know, but the fundament, right? You know what I mean?